She was having tea alone, until the Duke's mother whispered, "Pretend you're my son's fiancée." The teacup was halfway to her lips when the old woman sat down across from her, uninvited, and said the words that would change everything. "Pretend you're my son's fiancée. Do this for me, and I will make it worth your while." Clara Bennet nearly dropped the cup. She was 26 years old, sitting alone in the corner of the Ashford tea house on a grey Tuesday afternoon. Exactly the way she sat alone most afternoons since her father's shop had closed and taken half their savings with it. She had come for the cheapest pot of tea on the menu and a moment of quiet before returning to a house that felt smaller every week. She had not come to be recruited into a stranger's scheme. "I'm sorry," Clara said carefully. "I think you have the wrong table." "I have the right table," the woman said. Her name, Clara would soon learn, was Dowager Duchess Cordelia Ashworth, and she spoke with a kind of certainty that came from 70 years of never being told no. "You are alone. You are polished but not wealthy. I can tell by the mending on your gloves. And you have an honest face. That is precisely what I need." "Need for what exactly?" Cordelia glanced toward the window, where a carriage bearing an emblem Clara did not recognize sat waiting at the curb. "My son returns from the War Office in 1 hour. He has spent 3 years avoiding marriage, avoiding society, avoiding me. Tonight there is a dinner with the Prescott family, who have made it clear that their daughter expects a proposal by winter. I do not dislike Miss Prescott. I despise what marrying her would do to my son. That still doesn't explain why you're speaking to me. Because if my son arrives to find he already has a fiancée, the Prescotts will have no choice but to withdraw gracefully, and my son will have the one thing he has not had since he returned from that war time. Time to breathe. Time to become himself again before someone forces a ring onto his hand for the sake of a merger disguised as a marriage." Clara set down her teacup. "You want me to lie to an entire dinner party." "I want you to have dinner," Cordelia corrected. "One dinner. You will be paid generously, and by morning you may return to whatever life you please, £20 richer and never troubled by any of us again." £20 was more than Clara's mother earned in 4 months of sewing. She thought of the unpaid rent notice still folded in her coat pocket. She thought of her mother's hands, raw and cramped from needlework that no longer covered their expenses. "One dinner," Clara said. "One dinner," Cordelia agreed, though something flickered behind her eyes that Clara would only understand much later, a flicker that was not quite honest. The carriage ride to Ashworth House felt like moving through someone else's dream. Cordelia briefed her quickly. Her name was now Clara Whitfield, a distant cousin of a respectable family in Bath. She had met the Duke, Nathaniel Ashworth, at a garden party the previous spring. It was a whirlwind courtship, kept quiet out of respect for his recent return from service. "And if he asks me something I cannot answer?" Clara asked. "Nathaniel does not ask questions at dinner parties," Cordelia said. "He barely speaks at all these days. That, my dear, is rather the point." Clara did not fully understand what that meant until she saw him. Nathaniel Ashworth entered the drawing room like a man walking into a room full of people who wanted something from him, because that was exactly what it was. He was tall and tired in a way that had nothing to do with hours slept. His eyes moved across the room and stopped on Clara with open confusion, the confusion of a man meeting a stranger he had apparently been engaged to for 6 months. Clara's stomach dropped. "He doesn't know." Cordelia had not told her son anything at all. There was no time to correct it. The Prescotts arrived moments later, and Cordelia swept forward with introductions so smooth and so fast that Nathaniel had no opening to object without causing a scene in front of guests his mother clearly intended to humiliate. "Miss Whitfield," he said instead, taking Clara's offered hand, his voice carefully even, his eyes carrying a question that promised a reckoning later. "How wonderful to see you again." Dinner was the longest hour of Clara's life. She improvised details about a garden party she had never attended. She caught Nathaniel's jaw tightening every time she spoke, though he never once contradicted her. Not when Mrs. Prescott asked how they met, not when the Duke's aunt asked about wedding dates, not even when young Miss Prescott, pale and clearly humiliated, excused herself early from the table. Clara felt sick watching her go. This wasn't a victimless lie. Somewhere in this scheme, a real person was being hurt, and no one had thought to mention that part in the tea house. After dinner, Nathaniel found Clara alone on the terrace, where she had escaped to breathe air that did not taste like deception. "Who are you?" he said. "And what exactly has my mother paid you to do?" There was no point lying anymore. £20. One dinner. Your mother said you needed time before the Prescotts forced a proposal on you. Something shifted in his expression. Not anger exactly, but a bitter, exhausted recognition. That sounds like her. Rearranging lives like furniture. Always certain she knows better. "I'm sorry," Clara said. "I didn't know Miss Prescott would be hurt by it. I would not have agreed if I'd understood what it would cost her." Nathaniel studied her for a long moment. "You're the first person in this house tonight who's apologized for anything." He looked out at the dark garden. "Miss Prescott and I were never going to suit. My mother is wrong about the method, but she isn't entirely wrong about the outcome. I have spent 3 years unable to sit in a room without counting the exits. I am not ready to marry anyone, least of all someone who wants a husband who no longer exists." "What happened to you?" Clara asked before she could stop herself. "The war happened," he said simply, and something in his tone told her that was the only answer he was willing to give a stranger, however strange this particular evening had made them to each other. They stood in silence for a while, and it was, strangely, the first comfortable silence Clara had experienced all evening. "I should go," she finally said. "I've done what your mother asked. Tomorrow I disappear back into my own life, and you can tell your family the engagement ended quietly." "Will you?" Nathaniel asked. "Disappear, I mean. That was the arrangement. My mother has a habit of making arrangements without consulting the people they affect," he said. "I find I would rather make my own for once. Have dinner with me again. Not for my mother. Not for £20. Because for the first time in 3 years, tonight did not feel like a room I was trying to escape." Clara hesitated. "Your Grace, I'm not what your mother described. I have no fortune, no connections worth mentioning. I sew hems to help pay rent." "My mother described a fiancé who doesn't exist," Nathaniel said. "I am asking the woman who apologized to a stranger on my terrace instead of celebrating £20. That woman I would like to know." 3 weeks later, Cordelia found them in the same tea house where the entire scheme had begun, sitting together over a pot of tea neither of them had ordered from the cheap end of the menu. "I see my arrangement has taken a turn I did not anticipate," Cordelia said, settling herself at their table with the same certainty she'd shown the day she recruited Clara. "Your arrangement is over, Mother," Nathaniel said. "Whatever happens next is ours." Cordelia looked at Clara for a long moment, and for the first time since they'd met, something like genuine respect crossed the old woman's face. "You were supposed to disappear, Miss Bennet." "I know," Clara said. "But I found something worth staying for." Cordelia almost smiled. "Then perhaps, for once, my scheming produced something honest by accident." She rose, straightened her gloves and added almost to herself, £20 well spent, I should think." She left them at the table and outside the window. The same grey Tuesday sky that had once felt like the ceiling of a shrinking life now simply looked like the beginning of an ordinary, unplanned afternoon, the first one Clara had chosen entirely for herself. Engagement question. Do you think Clara was right to fall for Nathaniel after starting their relationship built on a lie, or should trust built on deception never be trusted at all?